cremation grounds and fear, I suppose they come in all sorts of ways. As Vajrayana put it, and public speaking is certainly one that I can relate to as a cremation ground. And I have avoided it for a fair few years, but I think time has come and I stopped avoiding it, really. So about in 2011, I came here, and I could have personally, with a straight face, I could have said I have no emotions and I don't do emotions, and genuinely meant that. And it's just surprising how, having practiced and to an extent gone into small cremation grounds, I can stand here today and say I certainly feel emotions. And a lot of it at the moment is obviously facing fear and anxiety because of giving a talk, basically. But it is quite different in the sense that when I came, it was more like a sedate dullness, an alienation of emotions rather than an absence of it, and quite different now. I do. Although there is fear and anxiety, it's actually, I feel more alive than I have for a long time. Or it's definitely a strong sense of being alive, feeling alive. So I want to start a bit about the original traditional meaning in terms of cremation grounds relating to death and facing death. And personally, I have no experience, or I can't remember seeing a dead body. I certainly don't have an experience of as Vajrayana was putting it, jackals and dead body bits everywhere, and you know, the sound of maybe burning bodies or the smell of it, which itself I'm sure is a very strong experience. But just even thinking about it, it starts to give me a sense of fear and sadness that there's an inevitable end for everybody, for all of us in a way, and all I love. And when I'm in touch with that, there is a sense of sadness and fear, but also I'm quite strongly in touch with love for people I care about. It really becomes alive, and also quite a strong sense of gratitude for people in my life and what they have done. And I could say there's also quite a strong sense of forgiveness. And when I was reading in the Dhammapada, I came across a bit where it says. So those of us who know we're heading for death compose their quarrels, and I could really see that if I'm in touch with death and what's in a way waiting, all these little niggles in my life, all these little disputes, all these little things that usually bother me, distract me, kind of disappear. I've just got a strong sense of love for the people in my life and a strong sense of gratitude. And a lot of forgiveness for all things I've done and other people have done. So I found it quite an effective way, sort of metaphor, yeah. And even if I haven't seen dead bodies myself, just thinking about it's been quite effective. So what I'd say is like mostly my experience of working in cremation grounds is working with aversion. So aversion, especially something like here, public talking, and. It does make me think about why would I go out and work with fears? Why should I go and face anxiety and fears? Why should I put myself in that kind of position? And I think people can relate to the idea of staying in comfort zones. You know, it's quite easy to stay in comfort zones. Quite easy to stay with my habits and what's familiar. And kind of people. Some of you would have heard the fish basket story with the fish basket, and you can always ask others more about it later. I think I don't quite have time to go into it, but I do like the idea of just staying with what's familiar with me. That's a very, very, very tempting option. But as a Buddhist, what I want to do is change. I want to grow, and the term we use is sometimes spiritual death, as in letting go of the old me, and that's not going to happen in my comfort zones. So I need to, I want to grow, I want to change, I want to be more creative, I want to find different ways of doing things, and I want to lead towards enlightenment. And that's not going to happen if I don't move into a cremation ground, if I don't face my fears and anxieties. So, and maybe it's worth mentioning that it's not facing all our fears is necessarily a cremation ground, or it's not necessarily recommended. You know, there are fears that's good to listen to. I don't know. It's not good to hang too close to the edge of a cliff or something like that, although you might give you fear. It's not the kind of thing we're talking about. You know, use some, be reasonable about what fears we do face up to. And for me, they've got to be for skillful reasons, really. There need to be skillful reasons for why I'm facing up to my fears and anxiety and doing something I'd much rather avoid in many ways. So when I think about spiritual death and rebirth and this being part of what I want to move towards, what I aspire to, and I want to change the old me and grow and become more and more bigger me, and more bigger and a new me, and be more creative. And basically to do that, what's important for me is to reflect that I want to change, I want to grow, and keep this in mind. And there's also a passage from the Karanya Metta Sutta, if people have come across that, and it starts basically by saying you want to become a more capable person, and the passage itself I think goes, so if you know what is truly good for you and understand the possibility of reaching a state of perfect peace, then this is how you need to live. And it says start by becoming a capable person. So if we're not used to facing fears and anxieties, then that's quite a limiting thing. So I really want to be able to become more capable, and to me that's working with fears and anxiety and being able to face them. So it's quite common that we're aware that as Buddhists, we want to develop compassion, we want to develop empathy, we want to develop patience and sort of gentle qualities. But although they're essential, they're not quite enough. You know, if we want to really go for enlightenment, if we really truly want to grow, we need to develop what I refer to sometimes as the heroic quality, the heroic virtues. And these would be like things like courage and self-confidence and self-reliance and energy, initiative. So these are quite important things to develop, and these will only really happen if we move into the cremation grounds, if we start facing fear and anxiety, and still go and do what's limiting us, what's stopping us. So, I find it very helpful to reflect on the fact that if it wasn't for people like Amangamangsha and Vadanya, and there's people like Achara and Siddhi, who really took initiative, who really put energy into this place and started at the Sheffield Buddhist Centre, there wouldn't be a centre. And this list can go on and on and on, and there's present people who've chaired the centre, and for me, like Maitrivasin and Suryamati are massive influences in my life, and I've seen how much energy they've put into this place, how much initiative they've shown, and that's created something very valuable for me. And in a way, in many ways, it saved my life, and I can quite easily say that. So I want to change for the better. I want to grow, and I want to contribute to what I've received here. And I want to sort of become part of this lineage. I want to become more and more part of this movement and be more of a force in this movement, in this altruistic momentum. And that is one of the reasons, or one of the main reasons, I put myself into a situation that I'm quite, in a way, uncomfortable in. And staying mindful of this, I kind of get a strong sort of encouragement, strong desire to kind of work with the fear, with the anxiety, and not be limited basically to just receiving. Because I want to be able to give as well for what I've received. So it's been interesting basically in the last few weeks that I've known about for a month that I'll be giving a little talk, and just seeing often my mind kind of bringing up fear and dread basically about what's coming, and it's just quite interesting how it appears, and I just want to say, wish I can find a way out of this, or at least part of me certainly wants to avoid it. And my habitual mind has been really trying to avoid the fear and anxiety that's coming. You know, just find distractions basically, which is what my mind quite often I've trained it to do in a way in decades before coming here. And I've found myself thinking, just instead of thinking about the talk or writing anything, I'll just go and have some more food, or I'll just find something to do. Just think of something to do, and it could be, just need a bit more sleep. That comes up quite a bit. And just general ignorance and denial of the fact that the talk's approaching, and I need to maybe put some effort into it or face the anxiety and discomfort of doing it. And I've got to say, at some stage I've entertained all these different distractions that my mind sort of suggested to me in a way. But at the end, I would say that it's like when I've stayed with the fear, I suppose that's a good way of putting it. When I've stayed with the fear, it's just dissolved itself. And it's the kind of staying which is acknowledging that it's there, but also holding it with kindness. And in that, I got a sort of the metaphor almost of like, if I'm running away, it's just chasing me. And it can go for longer than I can, basically. It's just chasing me. And as it's chasing me, it's getting bigger and bigger. It's becoming a bigger, bigger demon. And then when I stop and just look into it, face it, it just dissolves into a difficulty, maybe we can call it, or sort of a discomfort. But it's not the demon anymore. So there's a lot to be said about just staying with the initial discomfort, really, because it just really stops it from growing into something much bigger. And denying it and avoiding it or trying to run away and distract myself from it is just not worked so far. And it gets bigger and bigger. So having not had much time left, I would say that another way I found quite useful is looking at giving a talk, for example, that's bringing fear and dread for me, rather than just an experience of pain and difficulty and something difficult. Looking at it as part of a bigger thing. It's just a hurdle in direction towards my aspirations. So not just like an isolated incident or, well, this is this comfortable thing to do. Actually looking at the bigger picture, this is stopping me from growing. This is stopping me from being more than I can be and giving more than I am giving now. So that takes a lot of the power and the strength of the fear out of it as well, and gives me a lot of motivation to actually conquer it and move on with it. And just to finish off, I'd say, so my experience of taking on things that I find challenging, it's best not done with like jumping 2 feet into it. And the way I put it is that I've got, especially since coming back from Gurkha, I've got 1 foot in the cremation grounds, and I've got 1 foot in the comfort zone. And that feels sustainable. You know, that feels sustainable. I can do that. And the more I feel in a strong place, I can shift my weight a bit more into the cremation ground. And the more I'm getting a bit like, oh, I need a bit of break, I need to slow down a bit, and I can shift my weight back into my comfort zones. And I like that as an image of putting a sort of a balanced effort, really. A balanced effort towards facing fear and anxiety. Yeah. So you probably, many of you have heard this, which is like maybe the point I'd like to make most, is that you come across the phrase, a mess in progress, possibly. So we quite often refer to ourselves as a mess in progress, and when we're trying to develop, we're trying to grow. And I realise that if I don't face up to my fears and anxieties and there is no possibility of growth, there is just a mess. That's all I'm left with. I'm just left with a mess, and I don't want to be left with a mess. Really. So I want to progress as well, so I kind of put myself into cremation grounds and face difficulties and challenges in that way, so that I may grow myself and offer more to other people. I think that'll do. Thank you.
Fear and demons. My demons are mainly of self-view, negative self-view. So that's where we're going. I started with a memory of 55 years ago. Not many of you can say this. 55 years ago, I fell off. I was climbing on a rope and I fell off because it was raining and it was slippery. And I dangled for a bit. So I got back on the cliff face, and then I fell off again. And I decided at that point that maybe I wouldn't do any more rock climbing, which I think was an extremely sensible decision. I was probably 18, 19 or something, and I thought I was immortal. And when I fell off, I thought, no, you're not. Do you really want to die now? why I'm telling you that, I'm not suggesting that's a cremation ground, but why I'm telling you that is because from that, I decided that I was a coward, that I was really timid, I knew I was shy and unassertive, and that kind of got stuck with me. That's who I was. I'm not going to try that because I'm not that kind of person. So, when I came across the idea of cremation grounds, I thought, that's what I need, because I can't be this timid little soul anymore. I don't think I ever was, actually, but that view was in there. So, my first question is, do cremation grounds choose us, or do we choose them? I mean, the interesting ones are the ones we choose, but sometimes they just choose us, don't they? So I think my first one was, I just had my first child, and my brother was killed in a car crash. Now, that just totally chose me. And of course it was dreadful, but part of it was that everybody somehow grew in that, because we were alive with our emotions. So I come from a very inhibited family, and they weren't doing that. They were just upset, and they were comforting each other, and they were angry, and they were everything. So in a sense, that did feel like a cremation ground, because everybody became more real to themselves and to other people. So I'm not suggesting that in any way would be something I wanted to choose, but it's an example of something that happens and we just have to respond to it. Okay. But mostly I think I'm going to focus on choosing them. Choosing because we can see that something's got to change. So, okay, I've been vaguely aware that I limit myself. And how I'm aware is I listen to other people talking about their experience, and they say things that I think, oh, I could never do that. I'm not that kind of person. You know, you may have heard people at the centre talk about working in prisons, and I just kind of want to hide, or maybe working in a hospice, or all kinds of things that just seem very big and scary. Driving a van to the jungle in Calais. So when I hear that, my definition of a cremation ground is what seems completely impossible. That's not something I'm going to do. That's very stuck, isn't it? But facing that, oh, they may think it's possible, but it isn't for me. I think, okay, so what's my next step? And it might be really titchy, but it means that I'm not kind of, stepping backwards. And it kind of emerges somehow if I just stay with it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of life story of little cremation grounds, I suppose. So 20 years ago, something like that, more than that, I moved from living in a very nice village in North Lancashire to a big city, and that was extremely scary. Probably you've all done it, but it's still scary, I think, anyway. And I moved when I was middle-aged too, and you may not know this, some of you, but when you're middle-aged, people are not so interested in you. So again, you've just got to make all the running, really. So that was that move. And then, I was working in a job I'd never done before, living with a bunch of young women. I'd lived just in families before. So that was all challenging. And then after a bit, that wasn't scary enough. So I moved to a retreat centre where we train women for ordination. So I was living and working with these extremely scary, important, I can't even think of the words, our elders, basically. And I was very intimidated. And I thought, well, you can do that, or you can just get on with what needs to happen, which was, things like servicing the cars and doing the recycling and taking notes for minutes and stuff like that. So, responding to just what needed to happen, really. And then from there, I came to Sheffield. We went all over it again. I had to express myself. I had to be sociable. I mean, I know you're all lovely and all the rest of it, but you're not to somebody like me. Not at first. You're really scary. Sorry. Anyway, I'm still here. I'm still doing it. And from here, I went on ordination teams in Spain at Akashavana, and part of that is just having to give talks. So I gave talks and gave talks and gave talks until, quite straightforward, really, just do the next talk. And it kind of lost its, I can't do this. The other thing actually about being there is, in a sense, you're doing practices that are about spiritual death. So you're practicing thinking about the elements and how, what are we? We're just made up of transient elements. And I really felt quite comfortable that if I died there, it would have been absolutely fine. It would have been a kind of natural thing to happen. And it didn't feel scary at all. But coming back to, the possibility of being run over tomorrow, and I get scared again. But I still remember that feeling. The other thing I've done, which people like me don't do, is a Karana door knock appeal, where you knock on doors, you don't know who's there, they might be drunk, abusive, asleep, whatever, and you just ask them to give you money to support projects in India. So I'll come back to that, what I learned from that, but I survived. And last week I was on my kesa is because I'm an anagarika, so we take a vow of celibacy and simplicity. And a bunch of us were meeting together last week, and I realised that I was being asked to, but I wanted to respond to giving a sexual history of my life. Now, the age I am, the generation I am, the repressed upbringing I've had, and I did it! Amazing. Yeah, okay, so maybe my view of myself as this timid little soul who never says a word is a bit out of date. I'm hoping so. Okay. Yeah, I'll just come back to Karana for a minute, because that was a lesson I learned. So I was going around a very poor area of Birmingham, and I wasn't getting a whole lot of money, as you can imagine, because people didn't have any money. And so I wasn't afraid, I was just a bit dispirited. And one of the trainers said she'd come with me to see how I was doing. Maybe I was doing it all wrong. And she said, no, you're doing fine. But what I suggest is here's the door, just take a step closer. I can't do that. They'll hit me when they open the door, or they'll find me, I'll be totally in their face. No. She said, just try it. So I took a step forward, and it felt completely wrong, and it felt very scary. And I thought, oh, this is what I've been doing. This is how I've made myself safe. You'll notice next time I talk to you, I'll probably be standing about over here. That's how I kept myself safe, by just standing a little bit back. And then I could be in control, and the other person wasn't too threatening, even if they were drunk, even if they were cross with me for being there. And you know what? I started getting lots of money because I was just relating better. So I think that's been quite an image for me, because I do it all over the place. Oh, crikey. I do it all over the place, just keep a bit back and safe. Moving swiftly on then, another question I had was about the difference between doing this, moving into a cremation ground, and kind of bravado. So, which doesn't get you anywhere, because it's all about kind of proving something to yourself. So the first time, 4 years ago, I was asked to give a talk on my sexual history. No, thank you. I'm not ready to. But this time, 4 years it took me, never mind, I got there. It felt fine and kind of useful to other people. So I think if I'd done it when I could have done it, that would have been bravado. So here I am giving a talk, talking about dakinis. So bravado would be if I sort of showed you what dakinis were by kind of starting to take my clothes off because they're naked and they fly through the air and stuff. But actually, what would be the point? I'd hide from the camera for a start. No, there wouldn't be any point at all, would there? It would just be, well, I can do anything. But, so it would be about my ego. So I'm still not sure how to judge whether something is transformative, which is what we're after, or whether it's just a wipeout, totally devastating. And I suppose the only way to find out is to go for a smallish one, not go for the big one straight off. Because we're all going to make mistakes, aren't we? We're going to take on something that feels a bit too much, and then you have to recover, and people say, well, it's all right, well done for trying, kind of thing. Yeah, the only way is experience, isn't it? So, I've got 2 seconds left. What's still limiting me? Because, of course, plenty is. I want to tell you about my aim. There's a door to liberation called the apranita. And Sangharakshita says, well, it's the unbiased way to liberation. It's a state of absolute equanimity in which one has no egoistic motive for doing or not doing anything. It is an avenue of approach to reality, to enlightenment. So that's my aim, to be a marble on a smooth surface. So if something over here needs doing, I can just go and do it. There's nothing getting in the way. Well, I'm better than I was, but I still suddenly find the edge of the table is right there and disaster is about to strike. So I just have to keep on doing it. And my edges are usually about communication. I'm still scared of confrontation, of disagreement, I don't know what I think is going to happen. Are they going to kind of completely annihilate me or something? But it feels that strong. So for me to say, I don't see it that way, or no, I'm sorry, I don't agree with you, is mega, mega, mega. So please bear with me when I do that. Yeah. So the only thing that I'm still aware of that I haven't kind of fully formed is whether I hide, whether I use this to hide. Okay, sir? I know what I'm talking about, ha ha ha. I mean, it can be protection, but it can also be a bit of a target as well, can't it? Like having a big bullseye on your back or something. Attack me, attack me. So I'm trying to have less stand down from particular roles, which have their own safety, and just be me a lot more. And that reminds me of me dangling by the rope. I think going up the cliff and falling off, I think I'm ready to dangle without the rope.
Okay, so cremation grounds are something about like where I am right now. The sense of other people wanting to hear me, listening to me, it has an effect on me that it draws something out of me. It's got that strangeness where you discover something in yourself that you didn't know was there. And one of the things that I experience when I give a talk is that I plan the talk and I might have something written out. But when I actually stand in front of people and start talking, it's like the talk turns up and I didn't realize that I'd be saying, what I say. When I was asked to talk about the cremation grounds, a moment in my life came to me about 25 years ago when I left a very well-paid, secure position in London and to go and work for the centre team at the Manchester Buddhist Centre for nothing. And I think it was even full time. And I just got rid of everything I had to fit into a couple of suitcases. They drove down in a car. I got everything I was taking, fitted it into a car, and I drove up kind of north for the first time in my life. And I'd only been a Mitra for a year, and it was, it's not the present Manchester Buddhist Centre. It was a previous one, but the sort of place it was, the sort of place where people paint murals, 6 feet tall murals of Vajrayana surrounded by flames on their bedroom walls, to help them go to sleep. And it was, we had sevenfold puja every night. Community night was study led by Ratnaguna. And it was going to be absolutely wonderful, and it was awful. It was so awful that after 3 months, they asked me to leave. They didn't want me on the centre team. They didn't want me in the community. It was, I think it was an act of kindness, actually. And I went there and I didn't know myself. I didn't know myself because I'd not placed myself in a situation where I'd be rubbing up against people in that 24 hours, 24/7 kind of way. That if you're working right livelihood, so you're living in the place, you're working in the place. In fact, I probably almost never got out of the building hardly. It was continuous things to do, being with people. And I felt I couldn't do what they were doing. We went. They actually we went on a retreat, and the people in we're sort of working with, they decided that as their contribution to the retreat, they perform a pantomime, and they would sleep during the day, and they would rehearse for the pantomime during the night. And I couldn't. It was. I couldn't be part of what they were doing. I wanted to be, but that when we came back, because I hadn't been able to be part of what they were doing, I wasn't able to be. I felt that I wasn't connected, and I didn't know how to overcome that connection. In fact, I actually was beginning to. In a way, it was the experience of fear, but it was the fear. You can have fear of things that you know about, like the obvious fears, but you can have fear of what you actually don't know about because you don't know about it. It's and I think that was why I couldn't join in with what they were doing, because it would have meant going into something that was completely unknown. I before I went on my first retreat, I felt extremely frightened to do it. So what I did was I made an imaginary line on the floor, and I said that if I could step over that imaginary line, then I'd do it. And I felt the tremendous fear that just to lift my feet, like they were sort of tied by immense weight to the floor. But I managed to actually step over that line. And going to Manchester, to taking that step, it was like stepping over the line and making an agreement with what I don't know, that I would eventually know it. Anyway, it's kind of, Sangharakshana once said that when you commit to the unknown. And my reason for getting involved with Vajrayana, becoming an order member, was that I realized how valuable the unknown is, even though you don't know what it is. The fact that it is unknown is actually the place to go. I've got this is one of those points where you come into that unknown that I feel, just to that I wrote a story when I was going through that experience. I wrote a story to make sense of it. It was a story about a man who decides to become death's apprentice. I don't actually, I can't remember too much of the story, but I remember that he didn't want to do it. He didn't like what he saw death doing, but he wanted to be there because it was confronting himself with someone who would do what he didn't want to do. And I think that's actually one of the things, that experience that I went through. It was learning how to be with people who aren't doing what you want them to do, having an idea of how it's going to be and it doesn't turn out like that, and how to get through it without resentment. It's kind of stay curious and to be with it. And I think that resentment is like protecting yourself from the unknown. If you're disappointed and you put resentment aside and you just be with what it is, then other people come forward. It's I mean, in a way, it's like that idea of taking that step forward and being one step closer. And I learned how to be one step closer, even though I was kicking and screaming and hated it. And I've never forgotten that lesson.